Good afternoon and welcome to 5 on Friday, where I share my 5 favourite books of the week. And this week they are 5 very different but very amazing books in their own right. The first book that I want to show you is called The Lost Mustache. It's another publication by a small independent publisher in Australia called Red Paper Kite. I always have to check because I always go to say something else. And this is by Vicky Conley and Katerina Metti. Now, if you've been watching my 5 on Fridays for a while, you may remember that I shared a book called Snoozette late last year, and it was also illustrated by Katerina Metti. And this one's got that same really sophisticated, very beautiful style of illustration. The Lost Mustache is a gorgeous text celebrating curiosity in small children and imagination. Right from the title page we can see the moustache that is lost, and celebrating also the joy of dress-ups. So in this book we've got Frankie, who is this little private investigator here, all dressed up as one, and one day Frankie found a moustache. It was a nice moustache, but it was not Frankie's. At rehearsal, Frankie tip-tapped on a black hat. Is this your moustache? And we can see who might own that hat. And no, it is not the pirate's hat. And so we go on. And she goes around to all of her friends at the rehearsal trying to find who owns the lost moustache. Now, this is a gorgeous story which I've been sharing with my kindies and preps this week. And they've really, really liked guessing whose moustache it is. And what I very much like about it is that the punchline is very clever. I'm not going to share the punchline with you because it will spoil it, but I will give you a little clue as to the punchline. It says on the last page, "I never thought to look up there." Now, then we have to think about why we might have to look up there in regards to a lost moustache. But it's a really clever book. And like all of the publications from this publisher, they do a beautiful job in terms of the end papers, where they share some of the process illustrations, and the final pages of the books. There's the last end paper again, but also the final pages of the books are dedicated to colouring in, so you can add your own mark to these books, which I think is a really, really nice idea, particularly, of course, if you own these books at home. Not entirely sure how I would use this in a school situation. You can see actually a clue on here as to who owns the lost moustache. They're just gorgeous. I love the interactivity of these books and the idea that children can add to the book with their colouring in. I also really like these dedications. I'm a big fan of a quirky dedication. Vicky, the author's dedication, is to Finn and Anu, who share my love of dressing up. And Katerina's is to FF. Work to my friends, Ale the Prince, Tati and Isla, Heart 1 and Heart 2, and to Gilia, the blondie dancer, even if she hates wearing pink. To Important Choices, and to the Beatles. I love those dedications. Dedications are one of my favourite things to share when I'm reading a book with the students in my library. It's just really quirky and I adore it. So it's a must read if you are an early childhood teacher or have small children in your life. Okay, my next one is not one to share with small children in your life. I'm going to hold up the cover and just give you a moment to process that. So if you saw this cover in a bookshop as an adult who has been who's been around for a while, I was going to say, if you are an adult in Australia, you will probably recognise that this is the story of Azaria Chamberlain. The title of this book is Azaria, A True History, and it's by Mari Coote of a Melbourne-style publishing, or Melbourne-style books, I think they are. Melbourne-style books, I think. Now, Mari Coote is incredibly well known for her beautifully designed books. They're very graphic. They're very heavy on visual literacy elements. They are astonishing. I have to admit, when I first saw this book, I was a bit shocked. I thought, gosh, there's baby Azaria inside Ayers Rock. Is that even inside Uluru? Is that even culturally appropriate? I just was like, gosh, who would I share that book with? But then on reading the book, I was just completely and utterly blown away. It is it is acknowledged to the Anuga people, or the traditional owners of Uluru. It has been done in consultation with Lindy Chamberlain Creighton, and is in fact dedicated to Lindy Chamberlain Creighton and baby Azaria. There is Indigenous elders thanked in the book, and it's obviously been done in consultation with the traditional owners of Uluru. It starts at the bottom of the world. There's where a giant rock rises high above the horizon. People come from far and wide just to see it. People just like the family in the little yellow car. And there you can see the little yellow car. Like most visitors, their first day at the rock was filled with family fun and adventure. And so it goes on. This is the page I found really confronting. It was on that very night, while the family cooked a meal of beans, that a goanna took a moth for its supper, an eagle took a joey for its dinner, and a dingo took a baby. As an adult, I found that page really confronting, but when I have been reading it with my own children and when my mum read it with my nieces, it is in fact just a very matter-of-fact sharing of a very important slice of Australian history. The case of Azaria Chamberlain was one of the most unbelievable miscarriages of justices that Australia has ever seen. It was very much a case of trial by media. Lindy Chamberlain was considered unusual. She was considered not to be how a mother should be. She was imprisoned for life before that her conviction was overturned with a royal commission. And all of this happened 40 years ago, which seems incredible to me, but it actually happened 40 years ago from 2020, which is why this book is coming out now to sort of commemorate the 20th anniversary of Azaria Chamberlain's death, but also the trial and the idea that where civilization and Australia's very harsh natural environment and our flora and fauna collide, things can happen. So this is a book which very much takes readers from maybe 9 plus through what happened. It explores some of the issues around dingoes and when dingoes are around humans and we enter their territory. It is very much a Greek tragedy, a fairy tale. It's a non-fiction retelling of a slice of Australian history. In terms of a fairy tale, it is really just replacing a wolf with a dingo, making it more Australian. You can see that visually it is quite stunning. Amari Coote just does the most unbelievably quirky contemporary illustrations. I really love this page and can see that I will use this a lot at school as a way to look at the way the media can shape our opinions of things which are going on. It's an astonishing book. I cannot say enough good things about it, and it is confronting for sure. Is it age appropriate? Yeah, I think it is. I think it is quite age appropriate. We need to give our young people credit for the fact that they can deal with issues which are, you know, tough, but can be ones that they can explore. Okay, I just, you know, I sort of am lost for words talking about Azaria, which is unlike me, because it's just such an astonishing book, and I think it's going to go on to win very many awards. Okay, speaking of visually stunning, my next book is Bake Australia Great. I'm going to move from like Azaria Chamberlain, Australia, to koalas and happy things. So Catherine Sabbath is someone I have followed online for a very long time now, and I have wanted to purchase this book a number of times. I have in fact picked it up a few times. I have always put it back because I've thought, oh, I don't need another kids' birthday party cookbook. But the perfect person gifted me this book last week. One of my mother's best friends, also a librarian, gifted me this book, and it was really her that I spent a lot of my childhood with, and she's a great cake baker, and her kids and myself looked through the Woman's Weekly children's birthday party book back in the 80s and 90s. So it was perfect that she gifted me this book. Now, I was worried, as with all cookbooks that I purchased, that it might be very beautiful but not particularly useful. I can say that I have read this book every morning as I have been eating my breakfast, and there is about 5 million, actually there's not 5 million cakes in it, so that was an exaggeration. I am often accused of exaggerating. That was an exaggeration. There are at least 10 cakes in here that I am absolutely going to cook. I love the koala crunch pops. And for her birthday, Pudster, who will soon be 12, has chosen the pineapple cake, which I think looks amazing. And the person who gifted me the book said that I needed to make the pineapple cake. So I was very happy that Pud thought that was a good choice. I also love this glamorous Lamington cake. Her recipes are, I've cooked a lot of Catherine Sabbath recipes before, and whilst, yeah, they're, reasonably complex, they're more complex than something that you're going to find in, I don't know, Thermomix cookbook, for example. They are achievable, and I love the way she writes and the way she explains things. She's also got in here a pool cake, which is a nod to, of course, the Woman's Weekly cake book and its iconic swimming pool cake of the 80s. So it's just a beautiful book. It's a beautiful book visually, but it's also really useful, and I'm really looking forward to using that one extensively. Next up is a series which has been republished. Now, this is the Yinti series, and Magabala Books have just re-released these books. They came out, I think, in the early 1990s, and they have been best-selling books since that time, and rightly so. So these are for middle and upper primary and even maybe middle grade readers, and they give a really good insight into one young Indigenous boy from the Walmajari people, and his name was Jimmy Pike. He has passed away. Pat Lowe wrote these books with Jimmy Pike, and they are a fictionalised account of his life as a desert child, and then his desert dog, and then him as a desert cowboy, a stockman. So there is 3 books in the series. They are beautifully illustrated. As always, Magabala Books are really high quality. They take great care with the design of their books. The illustrations are in them are fantastic. I will say that they are fairly violent in parts, as all history is. Australian history is in parts very violent. Our landscape is harsh, as we were just talking about with the Azaria book. Our landscape is harsh and our elements are harsh. So there are parts of these stories which make them, I think, not particularly suitable for an early childhood audience, and they may come across as a book that you could read to an early childhood audience, but in fact I think they're better suited to middle and upper primary. They give a wonderful insight into life as an Indigenous child living in the desert, and then as an Indigenous stockman. I really, really enjoy them. I think I might have read them back in the early 2000s, because as I was rereading them last week, I thought I remember little bits of this, or maybe I've just read other stuff about Jimmy Pike. He was quite iconic. And then finally, moving well and truly away from Australia, this is a book by a Swedish author called Frida Nilsson. It is Hattie. Now, the reason I'm sharing this is that I am a massive fan of Pippi Longstocking, and I think that Frida Nilsson has probably written this generation's Pippi Longstocking. And Pippi Longstocking, for those of you who don't know, was written by another Swede, Astrid Lindgren, and like Pippi Longstocking, Hattie is just one of those girls that she's just, she's a bit naughty, she's super funny, she's witty, she's clever. Look, she's naughty. I love her. She's just brilliant. I laughed and laughed and laughed reading this book. It's got gorgeous illustrations by Stina Wyson, and the illustrations help young readers. So you could read this easily from 6 or 7, and Hattie is in fact 6 in the stories. And they're just super clever. I just want to read you this passage from the Waffle chapter. In no time, school starts again. When the children step into the classroom, a surprise is waiting for them. A new teacher, but the old teacher is still here because the new one is only staying for a month. She's training to be a teacher in the town. Her hair is yellow and wavy and her cheeks are pitted. She speaks as quietly as a mouse, and she almost never smiles. She stands at the blackboard to introduce herself. I come from Trossa, she tells the class. Then Hattie laughs so loud that the roof almost lifts, because Trossa means underpants. Soon all the others are laughing with her, and the teacher frowns. Shh, she hisses, glowering at Hattie. Stop being so silly. And the chapter goes on about Hattie just being super, not particularly nice to this substitute teacher. It's just Hattie is a gorgeous character. my 8-year-old, turning 9, the years are flying, really, really enjoyed this book. I heard her laughing and laughing as she was reading it, and I'm going to give this one to quite a lot of her friends this year for their birthdays. It is a really clever, funny, quirky, slightly naughty book, and I really enjoyed it. So that's my 5 books for this week. Have a great weekend. I again have a busy one. I've got an event tomorrow with Franée Lesac and Mark Greenwood at school where they're going to do some writing and illustrating workshops, and I'm really looking forward to that. If any of you are coming, please do come and say hello to me tomorrow. See you later. Bye.